Alder Wood.
Here.
Alder DeVoe.
Here.
Mayor O'Connor.
Here. I think we don't have any minutes tonight, is that correct?
Sure.
There are no appearances, no unfinished business, several items under new business. Item 6A, consideration of Resolution 25-4-2800, providing for the sale of $3.3 million in general obligation promissory notes, Series 2025A. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move to approve.
Is there a second? Patrick?
Yes, second.
Motion is approved.
Motion, it's just, for-
Or, I'm sorry.
yep,
We
just
have
for
motions.
Mark has this report,
I think I'd
Yep.
have this down by now. I'm already
She
forgetting.
maybe wants to get through this one a little faster tonight, guys.
All right. Who's going to, Mark, are you going to
Yeah,
talk about
I'll explain this. First of all, it started on City Council. The reason why it started on City Council and with this resolution is basically, this is authorizing our financial advisors, Huntington, to go to the bond market. So this is us authorizing that, and they'll come back at the next meeting with the rates at the next meeting for approval of the official sale of this promissory note. So I handed out a sheet, and I sent an email out today how I got to the $3.3 million. I'm just kind of walking through quick, explain where some of these numbers are coming from. So the approved budget, I have in the first column is $5,611,195, and that comes from page 2, 2025. You'll see where those numbers coming from in the second set of tables with the GO, water, sewer bonds, stormwater bonds, and TIF. We did not borrow for grants and other revenues with that. We're less the stormwater grant, and we originally did the original 2025 capital budget. We did not include the full amount of the grant amount. We include $150,000, so we need to subtract off another $1 million from that. We'll see later tonight, we went out for bids for the Public Works roof. That came about $1 million under budget, so that's been adjusted. The city campus design, I did take that out. Talking to Neil about this, $400,000. So we have $300,000 that was carried over from previous years that we haven't unspent yet. So this has been $300,000 plus the $400,000, $700,000. It's kind of decided based on where we're at right now with the city campus building. You know, we're finishing up the space needs that'll be done by the committee, and then eventually has to get to council. C.W. Smith, I believe, is working on the cost analysis, and then decide eventually if it's going to be, if we're going to approve it and go forward, and if it's going to be a survey or referendum, whatnot. I don't believe, based on those timelines, that we'll need that extra $400,000 in 2025 for that. Also, if we do somehow decide that, we're going home, we need to pay the architect right away, we have a refinancing we have to do in end of 2025. We have these bands that are coming due, that have to be refinanced into long-term notes. One of them is a general obligation note, which relates to Sam Damiano. So if we decide that we have to have that $400,000, we could wrap it into that borrowing if we need to. And that'll be around September at that time, so that's when that borrowing is going to come. We had some extra funds, some leftover funds from various funds that was subtracted out. And the stormwater amendment that we're talking about Kelly Place tonight. And this, I think, is probably where get confused compared to the fiscal note. I went back and I know the Public Works Committee approved, I believe, $162,000 for contingency. But I've been working with our legal attorneys, Quarles and Brady and Huntington, and I only put 50 in there at the time before it was officially approved. So if we're going to add it up to $162,000, we need to add another $112,000 to this borrowing. I put 50 in there for various reasons. One, just looking at past history, I looked at kind of last couple projects for Reach 64, kind of looked at last year's lift stations for the sewer. We didn't ever have to go past 50,000 in those. And also, we're gonna be doing the future borrowing, if we need to, in September again, if it really needs to go over that 50,000, I figure we just wrap it into there. Stormwater utilities is a very small utility too, and the total amount of revenue is $1 million. So adding that extra 162,000, it does have an impact on that, on those rates. So I was trying to figure a way to keep those rates down for the future and keep that borrowing down for the stormwater. So that was the reason why I put the 50,000 in there. I know it's proved. They're using, the construction matrix and what that's, I think it was like 7.6 is what they have for contingency. So I guess if you want to use the 162, which is fine, we just have to add $110,000 into this borrowing number for that. So that is the biggest. So it's not going to match right now. This 216 does not match the note in Kelly Place, because Kelly Place fiscal note is what the Public Works Committee approved.
Yeah.
So there's two different things. We have to adjust one or the other.
Neil, did you have something to?
Just a note, I think we want to be clear that we're not necessarily arguing the contingency amount. We believe that 7% is a pretty reasonable number. I think it's just how we would access that contingency if and when we needed it. I think certainly Director Stefani's concern is obviously if we need it, then we can access it quickly enough. But so I think we're, just in terms of industry standards, we're probably at the low end of contingencies related to for underground infrastructure projects, especially because those are when you probably get the most often get surprises is when you dig in below ground. So I think 7% is certainly I think a very reasonable contingency number. I think it's just a matter of how we want to have that structured if in fact we need it, either if it's borrowed as part of this overall borrowing, if it's a fund balance issue, if it's internal borrowing, if it's what we would like to see. So I think if council would like to give some direction on that, that would be probably most.
Yeah, and the other side of it, right now the rates are, we usually borrow, the average probably is around 3% is what we, last so many years. Last couple of years it's been increasing. Projected around 4.25%, so there's also saving a little bit of an interest by not doing that. So that's the other side of it too. So there's, different reasons for that. So it's, if you want to adjust it, the attorneys, which is Quarles and Brady's and Hutchinson, they're fine either way. We just need to tell them tomorrow morning, like, go ahead and add 110, or just leave it as is.
Thoughts? Doug?
But, question, since the stormwater utility is technically a separate entity,
Yeah.
we can still borrow for that under the general obligation promissory notes?
We can still borrow for that. We actually, I should have mentioned that too. We are borrowing the water portion under the GO with that. We wouldn't qualify if we did to do for revenue bonds. We'd really have to increase our rates in stormwater to really qualify for the revenue bonds. That's why we never have. Probably increase it by 30 or so percent to meet their requirements.
So then that wouldn't show up as utility debt?
It still shows in there for utility funds. It still gets paid by utilities, but what the downside of it is, there's a state limit for GO. So you can borrow 5% of general obligation, that your equalized value. So it would go into that number. So it reduces how much you can actually borrow for general obligation.
Okay.
We have right now, I think we're around 48% of our debt limit, the state debt limit.
Mhm.
So there's plenty of capacity in there. The big thing is, we are eventually, if we do the city campus building, the reason we were trying to get that extra
Right.
space, in case we use GO, but we're also looking at other sources of, types of debt to borrow with, like with the state point, or with the state loan, which will let us go out to longer periods. The GO can only go out 25 years. And that would not, if we went to a different loan structure with the building, that would not affect the GO. But we have about 48% of our capacity, which is probably about 45 to 50 million available.
Mhm.
It is a cheaper rate. We do use revenue bonds for utilities or for water and sewer. The reality is, we have the capacity now. If we really wanted to, it's actually cheaper because we're rated higher, and the city has a higher bond rating than the utility separate. It's very difficult, a separate utility, to get a good rating. A rating what we have for general obligation as a city as a whole. So it is a little bit more expensive by using revenue bonds. So if, in theory, if you really want to put everything as general obligation, it actually is cheaper in the long run for the utilities. We just haven't done that because we're trying to get that capacity. We thought at one time for the
Yeah. And, but a key difference between doing them as general obligation bonds versus revenue bonds is doing it with GO, we're promising the tax levy of the city to back it up.
yes,
With the other,
We're using revenues.
revenue
Yes.
stream, revenue.
that is the other,
From the
that's
utility.
the other con of it.
But, I mean, these are relatively smallish amounts, I guess, so.
Yeah, for the revenues, for the water, it's too small an amount for even to do a revenue bond, so like at least over $1 million or so to
Yeah.
actually do a revenue bond.
Anything else? Any other questions?
No.
Okay. Mark,
You stay with the 50, or is
do
that,
you
I
want to
guess?
save the 50?
Well, for now, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's, worth trying it with a lower contingency amount and see if it works. I just want to make sure that we do have the money we need for the project when it actually happens and has to be paid for.
But it sounds like you'd be able to fix that
Right.
if it was an issue
Yeah.
later in the year. So. Okay, if there isn't anything else, Aline, would you call the roll?
Alder DeColo?
Aye.
Alder Wood?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, item 6B, consideration of Resolution 25-4-2796, amending the 2025 capital budget for Kelly Place stormwater improvements. Is there a motion to approve this?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Dan, were you going to, or Mark, who's going to talk?
No, I'll do the amendment request. Brad will do Kelly Place bid and the garage bid, and then I'll be back with the chip seal bid award, so. So, we are seeking a capital budget amendment for the Kelly Place stormwater project. We have $1.86 million budgeted for this project. The bids came in at $1,965,883. We also have $60,000 in construction management by Veer Becker's staff to assist us with this project. The request is for an additional $328,000 to cover the bid amount and to cover the contingency. I guess the way it looks is we're going with a $50,000 contingency, which is 2.5% of the overall project cost. And that worries me, because if we do run into something where we need to use that contingency, it goes to the contractor, and then there's a certain percent that goes to our engineer as well. And we have to have the ability to act. So if we only have 50 grand and the cost of the item exceeds 50 grand, then we have to stop the project, and then we have to have an emergency meeting with Public Works, Finance, and City Council for the additional funding. The 7.4% I was asking for is still well below the industry standard of 15 to 20% for construction projects. I understand the finance director's concern, and I understand City Council's concern, but please know that when you make your decision that $50,000 is not a lot and it could go quick, and if it is needed, we're going to have some emergency meetings to get us more funding for this project. So that said, when we put the budget together for the $1.86 million, the price estimate was from April of 2024. And at that time, we had 22 budget items listed on the estimate. And design was not done until January of this year. And that the line item increased to 48 bid items. So there was a lot more design that had to occur from April of last year until January of this year. And that could account for some of the reason why we have that big of a difference in funding versus the bid amount. We did contact or discuss with the engineer, why they thought the bid amount came in higher than what we had budgeted. The design wasn't complete. The bypass line that we need to do for construction is a 60-inch stormwater main that we have to keep active during construction. The liner that's for the storm trap system, the entire structure has a liner to it. Fencing and pavers that were part of the design. We have to bring in all new backfill. We cannot use existing soil to backfill around the structure. So those are just a few things that led to the increase in cost for the project. So Public Works Committee did approve this at the April 2nd meeting, and if it's the desire of the Finance Committee to bring the contingency down to $50,000, I will present that at City Council here tonight when we get there. So happy to answer any questions.
Comments?
Did you-
Neil, would you?
Just to quite said, I think it certainly would be, I think maybe if council would like to do so, certainly could designate if that was needed, keeping that contingency, overall contingency at 7%, but identifying 50,000 in borrowing and then maybe a funding source for those other ones. You certainly have the option of doing that. So just something to consider, I would say. Because that might save some of the time concerns for Director Stefani if we had that designated already.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I was trying to think of something along those lines where we could authorize the administrator to use fund balance or whatever other funds are available. So that we would, if we have to do another borrowing to pay for it, we'd do that after, but we'd have the money available. I don't know. I mean, if I want to make sure we have enough money to do the project, I guess, and if the 7.4 is what we really need, I mean, Mark, what is it you're saying, past experiences we haven't?
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at the sewer, last year we had a big sewer project where we took out the underground sewer.
Lift stations.
Lift stations. That came under using contingency of less than 50,000. I looked back at Gateway Green. Again, that was less than 50,000 and kind of Stonebridge in those projects. So the kind of the past projects have been pretty close to where they've been. There's not, and I looked at other projects we've had. We don't have large, like $100-some thousand increases. It's maybe at the max 75. That's why I've noticed the prior projects. I mean large. Actually, where we find out, I've seen we use most contingency is probably in the building projects. Once they kind of open up the building, I've seen that we use more money that way. As far as per total, contingency per total cost of the project. But I haven't seen in these large public works projects that we've used a ton of contingencies.
Patrick?
I don't have any questions.
Dan had
Dan.
to say.
Mark is correct with our history of contingency. I think the only project that we really needed a contingency was our 2019 Bridge Road project where we had the early winter and we had to put down that temporary asphalt that had to be removed. But aside from that, the contingencies are there in case something comes up that your design doesn't account for, something in the ground that you have to work around or whatever it may be. We haven't ran into that a whole lot. We have had change orders. The change orders come out of the contingency. This project is pretty straightforward as far as the storm trap system, the bypass. I think we have a really good design and accounted for all the line items. But if you go with the 50,000 and you have another fallback, like you were just talking about, I think that would be fine, as long as we have the ability to act right away. But I do support what Mark is saying. We, all of our big projects, we have contingencies, and we have rarely used all of the allocated funding.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing, is if you need more, you're not necessarily gonna need the whole amount more.
Right, exactly.
I think especially given that we have some extra in fund balance because of the referendum, the tax increase from the referendum, that'd be available too, so.
Plus, on the backside of this project, we have $1.2 million, or, yeah, $1,150,000 that we're going to be receiving in grant funding once the project is complete. So there's money we're going to get back at the end, so
You just have to pay it up front.
we do have to pay it up front. Yeah.
Well, is there any, you want to propose any kind of language or anything, or,
Yeah, I will.
okay.
What kind of grant is it?
We have the DNR grant and the Dane County Stormwater grant.
Yes, I will propose an amendment to reduce the contingency amount to $50,000, but authorize the city administrator to use up to $110,000 from fund balance as a contingency,
if needed?
if needed, yeah.
Is there a second?
Yep, second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, now we are back to the original motion. Any further comments? Would the clerk please call the roll on the resolution as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution passes, motion passes, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6C, consideration of resolution 25-4-2797, award of contract for Kelly Place Stormwater Improvements Project. Is there a motion to approve this?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Brad?
All right. So the city received 2 bids for this project. Then Speedway Sand and Gravel was the apparent low bidder. After review of the bid materials, Veerbecker recommends approving this bid and moving forward with them as our prime contractor. The total amount of the bid was $1,965,883.41.
Any
Take any
questions for
questions?
Brad? No? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. Next item, D, consideration of resolution 25-4-2798, excuse me, award of contract for Public Works Garage Building Envelope Improvements. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move to approve.
Second.
Brad, this is
Yep.
your thing.
All right, so for the Public Works Garage Building Envelope Improvements Project, we also received 2 bids. KSW was the apparent low bidder with a bid of $510,593.90. This was also recommended for approval by the Public Works Committee. And yes, it was well below the estimated budget. But if you have any questions about that, I can answer some of those as well.
I'd be curious to know why.
Yeah.
I'd also would like to know if we can expect the library roof project to come in much lower than they estimated, because that was also estimated at 1.5 million. Now, I know that's a year or 2 away, but
So I think that this project had comparable projects pulled from around COVID and just shortly after. And based on discussions with the Building Envelope Consultants Group, those projects were similar but more difficult, more difficult to build. They're much taller buildings, much tighter work areas, different things like that. Materials were very similar, but the actual construction that it took to build those projects was much more expensive.
so do you think it could possibly mean that the library roof might not be as expensive as they think, or
It's
hard to say at this
yeah,
point?
it's hard to say. It could be 50-50. The library roof is a very, very different type of rooftop.
Yeah.
It has a ton of corners and weird alcoves and things to build around and rooftop units, whereas the Public Works garage is pretty much just one clean sheet, right? And it doesn't take a lot to do the Public Works garage. It's not that high off the ground. It's a big open area, so they're very, very different projects. The roof here also has two different types of roofs. You know, there's a flat roof that has ballast on it on the newer portion, and then there's the what they call high slope, but most of it's a mix of low slope and asphalt shingles and rubber membrane and stuff like that on the original part of the roof. So it's a very, very different project.
Patrick or Doug, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Just one follow-up, just so everybody knows, it's probably more for council. There is solar on that, and solar will come off, and it is not going back on, correct?
We haven't gotten any kind of contract drafted by Solar Legacy Co-op. So my assumption is that if they want to put the solar back on, or they want some other type of version of the existing contract, that they will be contacting the city shortly. And then that'll be up for finance and,
Because this is the deal where the
Council.
agreement we have with them now requires them to take it off all the buildings.
That is
So
correct,
It'd be
yeah.
really nice if they could just take it off the Public Works building for now.
yeah, that's the way that the contract is worded. It's all four facilities, it's all one contract. There's not four separate
Right.
contracts.
But it's a shame to have to take it off all the other ones this soon. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, will the clerk please call the roll?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 6E, consideration of resolution 25-4-2799, award of contract for 2025 street chip seal project.
Thank you, Mayor.
Move approval.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Second.
There we go.
really out of it tonight. Dan?
Thank you. Staff did receive bids for the annual street maintenance as well for chip sealing. It's one of our bigger projects that we've had for chip sealing. Just over 43,000 square yards and 17 streets getting done this year. Farner and Scott Construction are always the two in our part of the state that put in bids for this kind of work. And Farner Asphalt did provide the low base bid for the chip seal. I'm not seeking approval for the fog seal treatment this year. The low bid is $135,378.98. The Public Works Committee did approve this at the April 2nd meeting as well. I'll be coming forward at the May meetings with our street resurfacing bid award. So any balance that we have in the street repair account will go towards our own crews, asphalt patching throughout the city. We have some other crack seal work that we want to get done, and then some minor engineering help with street maintenance as well. But seeking the Finance Committee and City Council's approval or consideration later tonight for the Farner bid.
Questions for Dan?
Yeah, sure.
Doug?
About what's the linear distance of roads that we're doing, do you know, approximately?
That was a good question. Should have prepared for that one. I don't have the linear footage calculated, Alderwood. I can get that for you, though. It is quite a bit, though. We are doing 17 streets, and with the 43,000 square yards, I don't have that in my notes here.
Okay, that's fine.
Any other questions? Patrick?
Yeah, just a question about the fog sealing. I know that were we testing the fog sealing before? And we don't like the results, or is it too expensive? Just curious.
In some areas, the fog sealing works good, and in some areas, it wears off, like our two pilot areas on Winnequa Road. It receives more traffic, and in your neighborhood.
Mhm.
I know when I went through last year, we could still see it yet. I'm not sure what it looks like now after the winter. Out on River Place, we also have fog sealing, and it's still there, it hasn't worn off yet. So I think it's kind of hit or miss.
Okay.
But the dollars that would go towards it, I would rather use in other areas of street maintenance if we could.
Okay, sure, just
So-
curious.
But we could still add the chips, or the fog seal next year to these roads. We average about 12% chip loss in the first year. So if you go back and fog seal at that time, you will have already had your first, wearing of your typical loss in the first year. So something to consider for next year.
Thank you.
Anything else? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Item 6F, consideration of Renew Monona Loan Program request for Margaret and Veronica Wilsey, 5516 Pheasant Hill Road. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move to
Motion.
approve.
Second.
Okay, and this was approved at CDA last week.
Good evening.
Doug?
This request is actually, I'd like to pull this from the agenda. Just an update from the applicant. They're switching their contractor. It's pushed the project timeline out. The costs as well are not certain anymore. So they just provided that update over the weekend. So respectfully, I would just like to pull that from the agenda.
Do we need a motion to do that, or?
I just think just be no action at this point.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, then the next item, item G, consideration of Renew Monona Loan Program request for Alexander Gagno and Ashley Bergeron, 4606 Midmore Road. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Second.
And I assume you're Mr.
Yes, Alex Gagnon.
Alex, okay?
I did want to make a note. I caught a typo on our application. It is $1,000 higher than it should be in terms of the request, and I wanted to make a note of that. So,
Appreciate that,
I
thank
caught
you.
that tonight.
Okay.
My apologies.
Doug, did you?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So the request this evening is for 4606 Midmore Road. The Renew Monona loan request is within the major home rehab category. And the scope of the work here is to remodel the existing kitchen. The total work cost is just under $78,000, and included within the packet is the full bid from the contractor for that work. And as mentioned, so the city, the maximum loan amount is 50%, 50% of the total project cost. So it would be $1,000 exactly less than the application materials say. I do have that in the staff report as well for the suggested motion. So the total would actually be $38,912.10, not the $39,000. In terms of the criteria, the project, the home meets the assessed value. The project is listed within that category as an eligible cost. It does appear to be well thought out. I know, speaking to the applicant, the need is there for the new kitchen, and certainly the scope of the project looks to all be in place. This did not go to CDA. The loan amount was below the requirement to go to CDA, so it just comes to finance this evening. The applicant is planning to use personal savings for their portion of the project, but would not be able to proceed on the project without the additional assistance that the Renew Monona program can offer, and work is scheduled, all being well, to begin in June of this year. Thanks.
Any questions? Patrick?
Just real quick, I know we were talking about looking at that program and making some changes.
Yes.
Where are we with that?
So that came up at CDA at the most recent meeting, so that would be the March meeting, and I'm going to have some suggestions to the CDA for consideration in the next 2 months.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
this is still within the existing framework, and we sort of agreed, we've had a couple come in, and that sort of until changes are made to the program, we're reviewing under the current lens, but certainly there's going to be more discussion on that moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on to item 6H, review of job description for community service officer. Are we voting on this?
There is actually no action on this one, we're just asking feedback from the finance committee on this.
And who's going to be talk about
I will
this.
start off, and Ms. Kimmel is available for any other questions related to that. So thank you, Alders. Obviously, here tonight, we've got kind of an update essentially to the community service officer position. Essentially, this is a merger of two positions, so we're achieving a new efficiency by kind of merging these two positions. Essentially, we're taking the community service officer role, currently reports to the chief in the police department, and to kind of modifying that to incorporate some of the code enforcement responsibilities that was in the independent part-time code enforcement officer position. Specifically, I think the items specifically in under duties and responsibilities in number 4, and certainly even in number 5 were kind of the two that were pulled from the previous description. Discussions with the mayor today wanted to maybe specifically add property maintenance into number 4, either as a separate item or as under section B, probably listed as its own. I would say it's its own standalone item. We could certainly be doing that. It is certainly referenced in the ordinances in the back. At the very end of it, you see all the appropriate ordinances that this position may be involved with doing enforcement on. But with that, obviously, with kind of merging this position, we are in a need to kind of get this position up and running here with it being spring and seeing some new opportunities there to get out and do some enforcement,
Right.
so.
Yeah, my feeling is that we certainly hear enough about people who aren't happy with the way some properties look that I really think we should be specific in the job description that is a definite responsibility of the position, because it is an important part of the job.
And I think just as to recall, I think when we first brought this forward, we certainly wanted to, because we were putting all the ordinance references and things in specifically in the job description, we just wanted to bring it back to finance one more time, just
Yeah.
for feedback's sake, so.
Doug, did you?
Well, so this dovetails with the changes we made to the ordinance to give this position the power to issue citations. And this, now we have the description of what they would be enforcing.
That is correct, Alder.
So hopefully we'll have a more organized approach here.
We are confident in the individual we believe will be helping us with this, the efficiency and actually just community outreach and just relationships they already have in the community are going to be very, very positive. So we're excited to try to get this one out and move it as quick as possible. So.
Patrick, did you have any thoughts?
No other comments.
Okay, I think, Doug, did you have?
Would there be an increase in the hours?
Actually, the overall hours, I believe previously they were at 12 hours of code enforcement a week. Was it 16 hours of code enforcement a week? This is in addition to, I don't know, Chief, how many crossing guard hours did we generally have?
2 a day.
So 2 hours a day. We actually believe that we're kind of capping this at about 20 hours a week.
Okay.
But we actually think we're actually going to get more accomplished than the previous structure that we had. So we did adjust the salary range a little bit based on our compensation study to reflect the additional duties. But we do feel that it actually will be a cost savings in the budget and actually a little bit more of an efficiency enhancement to getting some more code enforcement done.
Anything else? Okay, is that what you need?
That's what we needed.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to acceptance of general fund accounts payable checks dated March 14th through April 3rd, 2025. Documentation of invoices paid is available in the city clerk's office. Mark.
Thanks. Excuse me. Not a lot of activity, everything's just kind of general, everyday operations. Page 43, the complete office of Wisconsin, it's a story room furniture. This is for the library. If you notice, the GL accounts of 800-48. These are library donations accounts, so that's what it's paid out of for that. At the very bottom for a student, they did January and February. They're all done, and everybody sees Metro, so there's her last bills for that. Page 47, just Strand, what they're working on right now for us, Nichols Road, City Campus, Southtown Improvement. Page 51.
Can we go back to 48?
Sure.
I'm just curious what this UW Foundation greatest on behalf of Matt LaPage for $150.
It's a good question, I have to look into it. It's, what is it? It's a senior center, yeah.
The speaker. And then probably a speaker for a senior center program,
Oh,
would be my
okay.
guess, Mayor.
All right,
But I can look into it, yeah.
so maybe ask for donation.
Yeah.
Instead of, okay.
Page 51 is the Amazon, we kind of use our Lake Ridge and Amazon accounts. So it's a lot of Amazon, and most of those are related to Fund 204, which is the park and rec funds. Page 52, Broadway Monona LLC. This is the final payment for the developers agreement down at North Point. It did take a little bit of a while, but Doug had, with these agreements, there's a lot of sign-offs, a lot of requirements. And you do get audited, because we do get actually audited on those. Not that they would just write up a report if we weren't following our procedures. I shout out to Doug for making them follow all the procedures that are in the agreement, because it did take a little bit longer than probably could have, but because more not on our side. But that's the final payment, so everything down there, the White Horse and this project, it's all been borrowed for and paid for with this.
And you got, was it the repeater or something? Some kind of receiver issue that, that's all taken care of?
Page 54, at the very bottom, Andretti Company Real Estate Appraisal. That is the Walmart case, so that's our, who we're using, our specialist, our expert.
Mark, if I could provide just a quick update on that item.
Sure.
We think we wanted to share sort of the Finance Committee. Our legal representation on this is filed for a stay on the two cases we currently have in litigation. There are two other cases that are very, very similar to what Monona's cases are, and their recommendation, and I believe Walmart has agreed to one, and is still evaluating the second. Essentially, there's no sense in both of us paying our attorneys to get ramped up for a case that essentially is pretty identical to the one we would be bringing forward. So kudos to our legal counsel for doing that. Could potentially save us about $40,000 in legal fees this year. So,
That'd be good.
so it'd be nice to have one go that way for once. So.
Couple last ones. Page 61, Lakeside International LLC. This is the chassis. This is actually from, I believe it's 2022 or 2023. So it's been on back order for a while. So we first finally got this piece, but there's another piece that goes with it to put it really in service, and that won't take, it'll take like another year to get it. So slow process with that. Page 62, MSA, that's just a couple projects they're working on for us. And that's all I have.
Any questions about the bills?
I have one on page 58. The Wall Street Journal 1-year subscription is $759.
What?
That seems pretty high.
We need that?
Well, I know right now it's
I'm not
paid.
questioning the subscription. It's
Yeah.
more like that. That's like two subscriptions.
Yeah, it's paid out of the 800 funds. I don't know what 35 is. Is that the library? Yeah, so it's, they're paying it out of their donations account, but that's expensive. We actually used to get the State Journal, just the City Hall, and it was just too expensive, so we had to cancel that.
Okay.
Should get Frugal Living magazine.
Yeah, so it is paid out of their donations accounts.
Okay.
I think that's everything. Do you have any staff updates, Neil?
No, I do not, Mayor.
I think we need to vote on
I'm sorry. Is there a motion to accept the bills?
Motion to accept the bills.
that. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes. We have no staff updates. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned. If we're more together for the next meeting.
One more.
Yeah.
You still, you said,
That's true.
maybe we get the extra hours.